think China's been far more successful than America has for the vast majority of its population. Chinese aren't the ones who are demonstrating against immigration laws like America's doing at the moment. China doesn't have masses of homeless people on the streets of its city. I've walked through Chinese and American cities, and I tell you which ones I find more comfortable. It's the Chinese, because I don't have to step over a homeless person every 5 metres. Now, that happens in London these days. It certainly happens in San Francisco. There is more discomfort with the political system in America amongst Americans than you'll find amongst the Chinese.
Well,
what's up, everybody? Jackson here, and this Piers Morgan panel with Kevin O'Leary and Steve Keen covers two very different but connected topics. A genuinely striking military strategy O'Leary describes as tenderization, using precision AI-guided strikes to systematically pressure Iran's leadership without full-scale war, and a wealth tax debate that pits O'Leary's free market skepticism against Keen's point that China's model complicates the usual never works argument. I want to break down both because there's real, checkable substance buried in some genuinely wild rhetoric. Stick with me, get that like in, get subscribed, because we go through both the geopolitics and the economics here. Now, let's get into it.
You know, John Kenneth Galbraith, one of his most famous comments was to talk about America being characterized by private affluence and public squalor. And that really is the state of America. China's gone the opposite direction. It wants public affluence as well as private affluence. It showed the combination works. Now, that is completely against the narrative you're giving.
Kevin?
No, I don't agree. I think you brought up a very good point, though. There's only one large adversary to rival the success of the U.S. economy for 250 years with all of its faults. It's still the only country on earth where people will risk their lives drowning under barbed wire in a river to get into. The American dream is the primary export of the country. I don't see a lot of people
I'm not going to
begging
call it a
to live
why do I
in
call
China.
it get out of America these days? And when the
Well,
orange man is
that's a
it's the
cute
last
narrative,
place I
but
want to go, and I'm not
250
alone.
years of success. There's never been an economy as successful as the U.S., and it's still the #1 economy. If you gave me a choice, do I want to go live in China? I have no problem with the Chinese people. The government, I have a huge problem with. They are the adversary. And what's going to come of this is right now it doesn't look like it, but I guarantee you in 20 years, the Canadian economy that has everything U.S. needs is going to merge with the U.S. economy, and for only one reason, so they can spend 5% of GDP telling the Chinese, don't mess with us. That's where we're going. It's two different thoughts about how a human lives.
Yeah,
Freedom
and I
of
think China's
speech
been far more
versus
successful than America
communism.
has for the vast majority of its population. Chinese aren't the ones who are demonstrating against immigration laws like America's doing at the moment. China doesn't have masses of homeless people on the streets of its city. I've walked through Chinese and American cities, and I tell you which ones I find more comfortable. It's the Chinese, because I don't have to step over a homeless person every 5 metres. Now, that happens in London these days. It certainly happens in San Francisco. There is more discomfort with the political system in America amongst Americans than you'll find amongst the Chinese.
Well, I can't wait to see your home in Shanghai. That sounds great.
Well, come and visit.
Shanghai is Shanghai is an amazing city.
It is,
actually.
yeah.
I did a documentary on Shanghai.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an incredible place to go.
And I've been I lived in a fourth tier city for some time, only 4 million people, quite small by Chinese standards. And I spent about a month or two playing tennis with people there, going to have meals at local Chinese restaurants. There's a high quality of life at the average standard of living.
I agree the people are fantastic,
America has
but that
extremely
government
wealthy
policy,
people
world
and extremely
domination.
poor. And this,
I don't want my kids living under Chinese rule anywhere.
Well, your
in
kids
the world.
can stay
That's
where
what
they are,
want.
but I think a lot of kids in China are enjoying growing in China right now. And conversations I have with ordinary Chinese people with quite a wide range of lifestyles. They don't have the adversarial attitude toward the government that you have.
Look,
America seems to live in a Hollywood script,
but I have a few myself.
Rather than where it actually is.
I teach these kids at Harvard, okay? Chinese
no wonder they're
nationals,
making mistakes in warfare.
There's still some of them that get into North American institutions. They do not want to go home. They want to get an American passport, start an American business, enjoy the American dream, bring their parents over.
That's why America's charging $100,000 for HP visas now, is it? That's really a...
Let's start with the tenderization strategy, because it's a genuinely striking concept worth examining carefully rather than just reacting to the memorable name. O'Leary's core claim is that precision-guided munitions, combined with AI targeting systems, allow a country to threaten specific high-value assets, leadership residences, military infrastructure, revenue-generating capacity without full invasion or mass casualties, essentially using targeted destruction as an ongoing pressure mechanism against a regime's ability to fund its security apparatus. Steve Keen's response is worth taking seriously on its own legal terms. Deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure like desalination plants, even with high precision, can constitute a war crime under international humanitarian law, which distinguishes between military and civilian targets, regardless of how precisely a weapon can be aimed. That's not just a moral objection, it's a specific legal framework worth understanding, and precision targeting technology doesn't automatically make a strike lawful if the target itself is civilian infrastructure. Keen's broader pushback that this entire framing assumes only the US and its allies have this capability while treating Iran's own asymmetric responses, like closing the Strait of Hormuz, as somehow illegitimate, is a fair point about consistency. If a country's critical water or oil infrastructure is a legitimate target for one side, the same logic would apply to a legitimate target on the other side, and that adds worth sitting with, regardless of which side you're rooting for strategically. On the specific numbers O'Leary cited, a roughly 150,000 paid militia structure overseeing a much larger force and a monthly revenue figure funding that security apparatus. These are the kind of specific claims about Iranian military and paramilitary financing that would need verification against actual intelligence assessments or academic research on Iran's security structure, rather than accepted from a single financial analyst's framing, however confidently delivered. Now to the wealth tax debate, which is actually a well-structured disagreement worth taking seriously on both sides. O'Leary's argument that historical attempts at heavy wealth redistribution in Western democracies have generally led to capital flight and economic stagnation, citing high earners leaving high tax jurisdictions historically, is a real, documented pattern worth checking against the specific historical episodes he's referencing. Keen's counter that China represents a country pursuing significant state-directed redistribution and industrial development simultaneously with substantial economic growth complicates a simple redistribution never works narrative. And it's a fair challenge to sit with whether China's specific governance model, which differs enormously from Western democratic wealth tax proposals in both mechanism and political structure, is actually a compatible test case for a Western wealth tax proposal, is a real analytical question worth thinking through carefully rather than accepting either framing at face value, since the systems being compared are genuinely quite different. In structure, on the polling figures cited, roughly 70 to 75% of British people and 62% of Americans supporting higher taxes on billionaires. These are the kind of specific numbers worth checking directly against the original polling organizations. Since public opinion on tax policy specifics can vary significantly depending on how survey questions are worded, here's what I'd leave you with. Both parts of this conversation share a common thread worth noticing: confident, sweeping claims about what strategies will work, whether militarily or economically. deserve to be checked against the actual legal frameworks and historical evidence rather than accepted on the strength of confident delivery alone, especially when the stakes involve war crimes law in one case and people's economic well-being in the other are this serious. So tell me, do you think precision strike capability changes the moral and legal calculus of targeting infrastructure, or does the underlying civilian target problem remain the same regardless of how precise the weapon is? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more of these breakdowns that check the claims on both the geopolitical and economic fronts, get subscribed, because that's exactly what this channel is here for.